Hi, I'm Lizzie and this is Laura, and we have recently returned from a 5-day New Year's cruise on board P&O's Aurora. It was a 5-night celebration cruise due to call at Hamburg and Zeebrugge. We've sailed on Aurora twice before. Would we enjoy this cruise as much as our previous ones?
We've got a vlog series about this cruise on our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe and you check out those videos.
The first problem that we encountered was on embarkation. We arrived at the terminal building and we joined the early arrivals queue because we were earlier than our time. At first the queue was moving quite well, and then we discovered that security wasn't actually open. People who were already inside the terminal building were then held in there for quite a long period of time, whereas many passengers were then left outside standing in queues. This meant that we didn't start embarking until 2 hours after the time we were supposed to. We later found out this was due to bad weather on its previous cruise, and we feel that P&O could have just communicated this to us.
We felt that P&O should have asked us to arrive later. Ventura embarked on the same day from Southampton and also had a delayed embarkation, and those passengers were notified and asked to arrive later. This would have meant that we weren't stuck queuing outside the terminal building and that we had a much smoother experience once we had arrived. Once embarkation did get up and running, we also felt it was quite poorly organised. P&O were determined essentially to stick to those original boarding times, even though they were all long past. This meant that people were sort of tangled into queues and things like that. We actually saw one woman get sort of pushed to the ground and she hit her head during that incident because somebody was trying to get past her because their time had been called. So it was all a little bit disorganised. And when we actually got into the building, it was totally empty. So they were just calling people in from outside and boarding people straight through rather than using the waiting area that was available.
The whole embarkation process was just very chaotic, and it wasn't a very good start to our holiday.
Another sort of issue that arose really from the problems on the previous cruise was that there was some damage to Aurora. This meant that she wasn't really in the best condition for our cruise. We could see visible damage on the ship, and there were blowers on the carpets trying to dry those out quite frequently during this cruise. We also experienced venue closures. An example of this is Carmen's. This was closed for the first 2 full days of our cruise and only reopened on New Year's Eve.
This also then linked with the problems that we had in our cabin. If you've watched our vlog series, you will have seen that we had a massive problem with the air conditioning, i.e. we had none. We were in an inside cabin for this trip, and you wouldn't believe how hot and stuffy it can get in December when you have got no means of getting any air into your cabin. We completely understand that sometimes maintenance happens when you're on a cruise, but once again, if P&O had just notified us of this, there wouldn't have been as many people having problems with it. It wasn't just our cabin that had this problem, our whole corridor did. We were finally offered a second cabin on the last 2 nights that we could use to get ready and sleep in. However, we weren't offered any help with moving any of our luggage, and it was on a different deck, quite far forward and not the best location. We will talk more about these cabins in the cabin reviews that are coming soon.
Something that wasn't affected by the problems on the previous cruise was the food on board this sailing of Aurora. We thought the food in the main dining room was excellent on this cruise. It does feel like it's been a little while since we've been on a P&O cruise, so I suppose that means we weren't bored of the menus this time around, and everything that we were served in the main dining room was hot and fresh and tasted really good.
We ate in the main dining room every evening for our meals and really enjoyed the company on our table. We did enjoy a couple of speciality meals at lunchtimes when we ate in the glass house. The service in the glass house was a little bit slow, but we still enjoyed it. And we had the Sindhu tiffin lunch, which was a new experience for us. We're not sure if we'd have it again, but we did enjoy the food.
As this was a shorter cruise, we decided to opt for the deluxe drinks package. This was the first time we'd actually cruised with P&O since this package had become available, and we were excited to try it. We were able to enjoy a lot more cocktails than were available on the classic drinks package, and we also enjoyed sampling a few of the more expensive wines.
This drinks package certainly won't be for everyone because it is priced at $54.95 per day, or if purchased beforehand online, it is $49.95 per day. However, you do get your Peninsula discount off those prices if you are in the Peninsula Club. Due to this being a shorter cruise and a festive celebration cruise, we found it was definitely worth purchasing. It meant that we didn't have to worry about cost, and we did, as Laura's already said, sample a few of the more expensive wines and cocktails, which we probably wouldn't have if we had had the classics drinks package or not had a drinks package. On this cruise, we found entertainment was a little bit lacking. We are unsure if it was because we've been spoiled on previous cruises or if it's because of some of the venue closures, but we felt like more could have been provided. A particular highlight, however, for us was the headliner's show, Applause. We love musical theatre, and this was a real treat with all of the costume changes and different songs from different musicals. Luckily, this didn't affect our enjoyment of the cruise because all of our fellow passengers made it a real party atmosphere on board.
As this cruise was sailing over New Year, there were a lot of people on board that were clearly up for a good time. The bars and nightclub on board Aurora were lively until the early hours of the morning. Check out our New Year's Eve video to see how late we managed to stay up in masquerade that night.
A highlight for us was the fireworks in Hamburg on New Year's Eve. Being at the aft of the ship and getting to watch all the fireworks in Hamburg was an amazing experience. We also enjoyed the fact that when we boarded, the ship was fully decorated still for Christmas. However, we were a little bit sad that the decorations did get taken down while we were on board, and we saw the ship fully Christmassy and not Christmassy.
We had 2 ports scheduled for this cruise. They were Hamburg and Zeebrugge. Hamburg was advertised as an overnight, however, we departed early on New Year's Day morning, so we didn't get the chance to experience Hamburg for a second day, and this became another sea day for us.
Hamburg was a new port for us, even though it's been on some of our cruise itineraries before. We've never actually made it there. We were lucky that Tom and Dom were with us, and they've been there quite a few times on their cruises, so we had our own personal tour guides. We both liked Hamburg, and we would like to go back there and visit again because it was a Sunday, none of the shops were open, so it put a little bit of a dampener on the day.
Unfortunately, weather conditions meant we weren't able to dock in Zeebrugge. Now, obviously this is no fault of P&O, you can't control the weather, but it did mean that we only had 1 port day on this 5-night cruise, so we ended up spending an awful lot of time on the ship, and Aurora is not the biggest ship. We've also never been to Bruges at this time of year before, so we were really looking forward to seeing the Christmas markets as they were still open during January. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do that, so we were a bit disappointed.
As always, the staff on board worked extremely hard, and we experienced some excellent service, in particular from some of the restaurants and some of the bars. We also got to know the reception team quite well because we had to pay frequent visits there to try and sort out the problem with the air conditioning in our cabin.
We were, however, disappointed with the lack of communication from the senior staff on board this ship. We felt that there was no acknowledgement of the problems that had happened. So as an example of this, on embarkation day, there wasn't any sort of apology to say they were sorry that boarding had started 2 hours late, which was a little bit strange. And nobody on board acknowledged the issues with the damage around the ship at any point.
As is usual, you could either choose to self-disembark or put your suitcase outside the room the night before. What we did find unusual was if you chose to put your suitcase outside the room, you weren't given a time slot of when you needed to disembark. It was just a bit more of a free-for-all. On the morning of disembarkation, you have to be out of your cabin by 8 a.m. So this time we chose to go for a main dining room breakfast. We did have to stand in a queue for quite a while, but we enjoyed quite a relaxed breakfast then inside the main dining room before we decided to disembark.
After breakfast, we headed straight to the gangway, where I was very surprised to be stopped from disembarking. Apparently I had an item in Lost and Found. As the reception team knew us quite well, they were literally holding it up for me as I approached. They actually had my handbag. I have no idea where I left it. We assume it was in either one of our 2 cabins. So thank you to P&O for finding that for me. And I thought it was actually really good that they stopped you from getting off without leaving it behind.
When we went into the baggage hall, our suitcases were very easy to find because we were one of the last people to get off the ship and there were barely any suitcases in there. We found it really easy to get a taxi outside and we jumped in a taxi straight to the car park to get our car back.
We have actually raised some of these issues with P&O since disembarking this cruise, and we have received a resolution, shall we say, regarding this that we're happy with. We were really appreciative of the way the representative that we spoke to talked through everything that we raised and did sound like, we were really listened to. So that is something that, always goes appreciated, and it does make you feel like they are going to try and resolve some of those problems in the future.
P&O did actually acknowledge that these were proper problems and did apologise for the embarkation and the problems we had with our cabin. This made us feel better because we were worried we just sounded like we were moaning far too much. Overall, we had a fantastic time on board the ship, despite the problems that we had. We weren't going to let them get in our way of enjoying our New Year's cruise. The fact that we had such a good time, however, was mainly due to the other passengers on board because everybody was up for celebrating and enjoying New Year.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give this video a like and pop any questions you've got in the comments down below. Please also make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on social media. We're Sisters on the Seas.